You might not realize it, but folk art is woven into the very fabric of the world we live in today. From the simplest hand-carved figurine to the elaborate, colorful quilts of old, folk art carries stories that span generations. It's not just art, it's a celebration of culture, identity, and craftsmanship that can connect us to the past, even in the modern world. Let's take a journey together through time and across the globe, uncovering the roots of folk art. We'll explore how this vibrant tradition emerged, how it adapted, and how it continues to impact us today. You'll come to see that folk art isn't just about decoration. It's about people, places, and stories that have shaped our lives. The roots. Folk art began as the art of everyday life. It wasn't about impressing galleries or following trends. It was about necessity, tradition, and personal expression. The earliest examples of folk art can be traced back to ancient cultures, where people created objects for practical use. But these objects were never just functional. They were beautiful too, reflecting the uniqueness of the culture they came from. Take, for example, the pottery of ancient Greece. While it served a practical purpose, it also carried intricate designs and storytelling motifs, telling stories of gods, heroes, and daily life. This was art meant to connect with others and carry meaning far beyond its use. Folk art in different cultures. Folk art flourished across the globe, each region putting its unique stamp on the tradition. In Mexico, vibrant colors and intricate patterns characterized the famous Talavera pottery, which is still made today using techniques passed down for generations. The designs were originally influenced by Spanish colonization, but evolved into something distinctly Mexican, representing both the indigenous culture and the blending of European influence. In Scandinavia, particularly in Norway and Sweden, folk art took the form of painted wooden furniture and decorative items. These items were crafted by peasants, often by hand, to make their homes more beautiful. Despite the simplicity of these objects, they were vibrant with color, and many featured floral patterns or scenes from everyday life. In Africa, folk art was incredibly diverse and integral to the spiritual and cultural life of various tribes. Masks, carvings, and textiles weren't just artistic. They were ceremonial objects used to honor deities, celebrate life cycles, and symbolize societal values. The craft was an expression of the community's identity, with each piece representing a unique story that could be read through symbols and designs. The transformation. As the world entered the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, folk art experienced a shift. While mass production of everyday items increased, many began to feel that the soul of craftsmanship was being lost in the machine. This prompted a reaction from the growing middle class and artists, known as the arts and crafts movement. Led by figures like William Morris in England, this movement sought to bring the handmade back to the forefront and rejected the impersonal nature of mass-produced goods. The arts and crafts movement was all about the beauty of simplicity and function, much like folk art itself. It aimed to revive traditional crafts like weaving, metalwork, and wood carving, but it also brought new attention to the beauty in everyday items. In a time when factory-made goods flooded the market, these artists saw value in the history and personal touch that folk art represented. In the US, this was a time when folk art began to develop a more distinct identity. With the blending of cultures from Europe, Africa, and the Americas, new forms of folk art emerged. From Amish quilts to Appalachian wood carvings, these art forms connected people to their heritage and provided a sense of pride in their communities. Folk art was seen not just as a relic of the past, but as a living tradition. Folk art in America. One of the most iconic examples of American folk art is the quilt. Quilting was originally a practical skill, but over time, it became a true art form. Each stitch, each pattern, told a story of the maker's life, the community, and even the larger social context of the time. The famous crazy quilts of the 19th century, which combined random and often whimsical patterns, reflected a personal approach to artistry that was unique to the maker. The works of folk artists in America continued to evolve in the 20th century as artists such as Grandma Moses became household names. Grandma Moses, born Anna Mary Robertson Moses, began painting in her late 70s and became one of the most beloved figures in American art. Her paintings often depicted rural scenes with vibrant landscapes and depictions of everyday life. Despite having no formal training, her work resonated deeply with people across the country, and her art continues to inspire. Folk art in the modern world. Today, folk art continues to evolve and inspire new generations of artists. While many artists still work with traditional techniques, folk art has also adapted to the modern world. Contemporary folk artists often combine traditional methods with modern materials, creating new forms of art that speak to today's issues, experiences, and hopes. Think of street art, for example. While it's often viewed as modern graffiti, street art has many of the same qualities as traditional folk art. It's personal, it's often a form of protest or expression, and it's deeply connected to the place where it is created. Street art might be more ephemeral than a carved wooden mask, but it's no less an expression of the artist's connection to the world around them. One of the most exciting things about folk art in today's world is its growing influence in mainstream art and design. Museums are increasingly showcasing folk art alongside more traditional art forms. High-end fashion brands and interior designers are incorporating folk art-inspired motifs into their collections. What was once seen as a quaint, rural craft is now recognized as a powerful and timeless form of artistic expression. The power of folk art. What makes folk art so powerful is its ability to connect us. Each piece tells a story. Whether it's a hand-painted plate from Mexico, a carved mask from Africa, or a painted wooden chair from Scandinavia. Folk art reminds us that art isn't just for museums or galleries. It's something that belongs in our homes, our hearts, and our everyday lives. Folk art is about culture, about identity, and about remembering where we came from. It's not about perfection or technique. It's about passion, creativity, and connection. It's about the person behind the artwork, the community they're part of, and the way their art transcends time and place. And this is where folk art connects deeply with us as viewers. It reminds us that we all have our own stories, our own voices, and our own creative expressions waiting to be shared. Why folk art matters. As we look back on the long and diverse history of folk art, it's clear that it isn't just about beautiful objects. Folk art is a mirror of humanity. It reflects our joys, our struggles, our beliefs, and our hopes. It's a universal language that transcends borders and connects us all. In today's world, where technology and mass production can sometimes disconnect us from our roots, folk art reminds us to stay grounded. It invites us to reconnect with the handmade, with the personal, and with the stories that make us who we are. Whether you're admiring a quilt, a wooden carving, or a piece of street art, you're witnessing a legacy of creativity, community, and culture that continues to thrive. So, next time you encounter a piece of folk art, remember, you're not just looking at an object, you're looking at a story. And maybe, just maybe, it's a story that will make you feel more connected to the world around you, to the people who created it, and to the history that shaped it. What's your favorite piece of folk art? Do you have a story behind a handmade item that's been passed down through generations? Drop a comment below and let's keep this beautiful tradition of storytelling alive. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating journeys into the history and art that shape our world.